Today I'm going to show you how I prep a sleeve for a show. So I just finished quilting a moonbow quilt is what the pattern's called. And it's all finished. It's ready to be bound. It's ready to have its sleeve put on as well. It needs to be hand stitched back. I used a bigger binding for the show because I use double bat. But you know, everyone has their own ways to make their binding, but that's just a little bit larger than I normally do. So I measured for the full width of the quilt across. So I've already measured. It came out to be like 81 inches. So the strip was 81 inches that you see here, all the way across from binding edge to binding edge. And then I went and finished the edges. I folded it in 1/2 inch and then I folded it in again. And then I stitched it down. So there wasn't really any raw edges here. This fabric tends to fray a lot, so I didn't want it to just be the raw edge here. So I folded it in twice, 1/2 inch. Now the reason why I did it was because I used a larger size binding, but you could easily just turn it in 1/4, whatever you prefer. I don't like it to be so close to my binding when I put it on, so I like it just to kind of be a little bit off of my binding. So I feel better to just fold it in 1/2 inch on both sides for this particular quilt, but you can see how you like it on your own with your own quilt. So that's the first step, is to finish those edges by folding them in. So the strip was 81 inches by 9 inches width. I do a 9-inch width, and I'll explain how this is all going to work shortly. So I folded the 9-inch width strip in half, so that's a nice fold line here. I'm going to baste and not lock because I want to tear it out later. I'm going to baste 1/4 inch across the top of the fold. So I'm going to go in 1/4 inch and baste it across. So I've basted it across. I use the longest that my machine will use. My Bruni uses a 6-inch length for the basting stitch because you don't want to be fussing to pick out all those little tiny stitches. So try to do the longest your machine will do. Makes it easier later. Okay, so this is why I cut at 9. A lot of directions online will say to do an 8.5 and then do 1/4 inch seam allowance. And that's so hard to open it up. You know, I just don't feel like fussing with it that much, you know, after you've put so much work in your quilt. So I've cut my strip longer for the 9-inch, and I fold it over and baste it. And then I'm going to go back to a regular stitch because I do want this to be locked in from end to end. So don't forget to back stitch. And I'll do a 1/2 inch stitch line that I will then press open, and it just makes it a lot easier to open it up. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to stitch a real stitch line 1/2 inch from the edge. Okay, so I have sewn my 1/2 inch seam here. You know what, I did put my wrong sides together, and I did that on purpose. I wanted my right sides to look like this. So for this making a sleeve, you put your wrong sides together, if that is even a choice for you. Because when you're going to open this up, you don't have to worry about finishing off. This is just making a sleeve here. So you're going to open this up and iron it. Okay. And then I'll show you what to do for the next step. But that's the first thing you want to do, is open it up and keep it pressed open for when you do this step. So you've cut this to be 9 inches wide, and then you did your baste of 1/4 inch when you folded it in half. You made your seam to be a 1/2 inch seam line so that you can open them up and press it. You could do 1/4, but you would need to make an 8.5 sleeve. But I like working with the 1/2 inch. So I use a 1/2 inch with my 9-inch wide strip, and I press it open, and I will keep the raw edge out like this. You do not want to turn this, okay? Turning it, this is gonna start fraying, and when you insert your pole, or when the show people insert your pole, it could get snagged, and then you could actually rip your thing right off, your sleeve right off. So keep this on the back of your quilt, okay? So that this side is going to be facing everybody. And so when I press this, I actually got the seam here that I made with the seam, or with the basting portion here where it made that basting seam, and I pressed them together, and I pressed it all the way across to have this this sleeve here. Now the rules for my competition said you had to have a 4-inch sleeve, so this is going to do the work for you because it's already 3.5 here, as you can see. All right, when it's pressed, and that's another reason why you don't turn it, because you'll lose some of your space that you need. So 3.5, and you're like, and that's where the magic happens, because the way these poles are and the way they have these little pinchers, because I've done takedown during shows, so I know what I'm talking about. And this is what the Peacemakers of St. Augustine have done for their quilts, and they're one of the big groups that help with the show, is they do this because they're going to take out, once you sew this on just like this, you don't want to take your basting out yet. You're going to put this towards the back of your quilt. I'm putting this on the top of my quilt. On the back, I'm putting the nasty side against the back of my quilt so that the basting side stays open. I'm going to then stitch down just the bottom. Do not stitch down the full thing here. You know, you get, sometimes people get really stuck on getting everything done and are like, oh no, I just stitched the whole thing down. Now you won't have any room for your pole. So make sure that you just stitch that bottom down and make sure you don't come out through the other side. So just take a little bit into the back of the quilt, and you're just going to hand stitch it on, and then come all the way over here at the at each fold line and stitch it all on. Do the same thing to the other short end, just the bottom part, stitch it on, and then come all the way back and stitch all the way back to where you started. Once you've secured that fully, now is the time to take out your basting. Don't forget to do that before you send off your quilts, because after everything's stitched, then you're allowed to take out your basting. And what that's going to do is give you some give, and that's going to be great for those the pincher things from the poles, from the way the frame thing is. It will get it so that it looks really nice on your pole. And that's what we do. So rephrase it. Measure fully the width of your quilt top. Cut out a sleeve that is that width times 9 inches. Finish the edges by a half is what I do. Or you could do finish by a quarter, but you really don't want it touching your binding. So like a little inwards from where your binding is, okay? And then what you'll do then is fold it in half, baste across a 1/4 inch with the largest stitch setting possible that your sewing machine allows. And then again, all this stuff is wrong sides together, so you have a pretty sleeve everyone can see. And then you're going to do a 1/2 inch seam, open it up, put the two together and press, and then you're going to pin it on your back of your top, and then you'll have some hand sewing time. And that's it. Hope this helped you. Have a wonderful day. Get those quilts and shows, people. Bye.